All right, and next I'd like to introduce Duffy and Justin from Electric Coffin, and they're going to start off with a little video. Let me do some magic over here. Is it?
Yeah. We'll get some unfun audio. Cool.
There you go. All right, here you go.
Do we need a microphone? Microphone. Can you hear us?
Hello, welcome.
Oh, you need a mic for that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm Duffy.
2 microphones and laptop.
Oh,
It's like a Beastie Boys song.
and a turntable. I'm Justin, and we are a couple guys from Electric Coffin. The third member is off on vacation, but you guys get us. We're just as goofy, so it's all good.
Yes. So that clip is from one of my favorite movies, actually my favorite movie, which is Angus. And it's about a fat kid who is good at science and okay at football, and basically wants to beat the system, which I felt like was me in high school, except I didn't wear purple suits.
Bummer.
But our conversation today, the topic is weird. I think that word can be construed in a bunch of different ways. Some people might think that it's offensive to be called weird. I think some people are intentionally weird, or it could be a style. I think for us, it's more about a way of thinking. I think it's just being, looking outside the norm, kind of being outside the box. And that's how we've approached our career.
Which was very accidental. I mean, to be completely candid, him and I met at skate park 5 years ago. Randomly, I butted into a conversation he was having with a friend, and we realized we had a lot of similarities, and lo and behold, we just decided to work together. And it was very organic and always weird inspired, or just off the cuff inspired, which kind of led us to, here we are today talking to you guys about this whole process and mind flow that we get into with some of our crazy projects.
So a little bit about us before we dive in. We own a company called Electric Coffin. The 3 main partners all have a degree in fine arts. We all went to art school. We had professors and teaching us about academia, art, and galleries, and we had critiques, and you had to go through all these steps to be an artist. You had to apply for grants, and we were like, we can make art in a different way. So here we go. One of the things we like to do as Electric Coffin is to look at public spaces in a different way, maybe spaces that you wouldn't think there would be art in, or you wouldn't traditionally try to put art in outside of just hanging something on the wall. We find that space is an interesting thing to discuss and look at. And so one of our main goals as a studio is to inject art through other traditional facets like interior design, visual identity. What else?
Yeah, well, I mean, really, a lot of us, well, the three of us have major backgrounds in sculpture, so every client and space that comes to us, we look at it, like a blank block of clay, like we're going to sculpt that space in, a theoretical sort of sense and create an experience that is holistic and, seamless, which doing that and creating elements that kind of daisy chain and, dot together can affect that and augment it and add to that whole experience as a whole and make it art forward but in a presentable way and not that sort of astute gallery sense where you're an elitist and you have to come in, and if you don't understand what that is on the wall, you're not included in the club. We're trying to be like art for everybody in a strange sense, which has given us a lot of opportunities to play in realms like the restaurant field was kind of one of the first areas we went into and started exploring this technique of art forward thinking with just traditional kind of restaurant mainframes. And I'll let you tell them about Jewel.
Sure. So this is a photo of Jewel. This is one of the first restaurants where we got through the whole space. And we are fortunate that the restaurant industry was going through a phase of experiential dining. And so, as the weirdos we are, I guess, it was great for us to get some really creative, fun clients who wanted to sort of rethink the idea of a restaurant and the dining experience. And so this is Jewel. In this photo, you can see the wallpaper. Oh, wrong way. How does this work? There we go. There's a little more up-close shot. And so, for instance, wallpaper you think is something you find on a wallpaper website, or you go to some wallpaper store or someplace over in Georgetown by the Design Center and you pick that out of a book or whatever they pick it out of. And our idea was, how can we create a wallpaper that's maybe looks normal, but what's a different approach? So that's actually not wallpaper. That is hand-painted plywood that is hand-screen painted painstakingly 13 by 13 inches at a time.
Yeah, that was our first wallpaper we ever did, and we realized they make bigger screens. Yes. What a concept! That was a rough one.
Yeah.
But the wallpaper was fascinating because it opened up this kind of bespoke suit mentality that we could apply to our clients, which was fantastically successful. If you go and look at that wallpaper up
Not
close,
to toot our own horn.
Yeah, sorry. There's things that relate directly to that client and tell their story at a deeper, kind of more just micro level. So you can get in there and see some of the details and go, oh, I understand. In the center of those motifs is a jewel atom made of engagement rings. And, the restaurant is called Jewel, which is spelled after the unit of energy, the measurement. But, it all relates to it in this holistic sort of theme. And it just gave us one opportunity where we're like, wow, that was really, really fun and successful, and there was just so much stuff for us to nerd out on. What else can we do to this space? Bam, a sign.
So I was not familiar that they spelled it Joule, and I was like, I got this great idea for the chandelier. What about a jewelry store sign? And they were like, yeah, we don't spell it that way. And I was like, well, fair enough.
Yeah. Right before we met with him, I was like, oh, dude, you spelled their name wrong.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, shoot, sorry. But amazingly, they loved it.
Yeah, we showed it to them anyway.
They're like, that's so good. Yeah, okay.
And this was a total accident, but I think we learned a big lesson from this. Sort of going to the weird, and like I said, weird for us is just a different approach. It's just thinking about things. It's letting yourself be weird, letting yourself think of the non-normal answer or reply or response or solution. It's what would be a weird thing that you could put on the wall, and maybe that might work or lend itself to an idea that could work really well, that people may not have seen before. And
Yeah, this is a great example of that because actually this isn't not a sign, this is a chandelier. That's how we pitched it to the client. So it's an interior hanging neon sign, which it looks like, which we made from scratch actually, but it looks old,
Yeah.
as if it was drug out of a ditch. But it's, in its pure form, it's a chandelier, but everybody thinks it's a sign, and we didn't intend to create a sign, but we still get requests for, hey, can you make our sign? We're like, oh, we're not really sign makers. We made
yeah, this
that
was a
one.
double-edged sword. So now we design
Yeah.
a lot of signs.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this was one of our next projects in the restaurant world. This is one that a lot of people might have seen. We're very fortunate. We lovingly call it the boat because it's a boat.
True.
And basically the client came to us and they said, we have this back bar of this big space. It's nautical themed. We want something crazy. And so we designed this really cool piece that was like this fish tank with a squid, and then there was like crushing this boat, and it was really cool. And then they were like, oh yes, it needs to hold the booze. And so we threw that out, and we came up with this boat. Little insider tip. The inspiration for this, I don't know if you've seen Wes Anderson's Life Aquatic, but when they zoom out and you can see that the Belafonte is one big set, we were like, oh, that's a great idea. So we decided to build a 24-foot version of that. The rooms were all laid out. You know, we were trying to be real professional here. And we made a grid, and we called out what the rooms were going to be. We're like, this is going to be like the engine room, and then this is going to be this room, and it was made sense. And then we started making it.
Yeah, and the way the three of us work is hilarious because one person starts into it and starts doing something, starts nerding out, and then leaves that. And then the next guy comes in and goes, destroys everything that one guy just did and redoes it completely. So that happened to this boat, like 6 times over. And by the end of it, we're like, well, that was supposed to be the engine room, but that's way cooler. I like the wrestling room with Macho Man.
He just ordered a bunch of
lasers.
1980s wrestling toys that showed up and
Yeah.
then decided to make a wrestling ring. So the boat has a wrestling ring.
Classic.
With everybody you'd expect, Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and if you look closely, actually Rocky Balboa is slapping the Russian wrestler in the face with a fish. Because it's a restaurant and they serve seafood.
Yes.
Full circle, yes.
And so we had a great time making this. You can see over here there's the frozen room with the Yeti. There is an engine room, or a computer room, but it's got a monkey and it's melting down. There's the pool with the shark balancing the 2 balls on his nose. There's the infamous wrestling room.
Yeah.
There's a game room with the jukebox on fire and some girl wearing a shirt that says, I love electric coffin. What else is in here? Oh, there's the whole boat. There's the vortex. We actually put in an art gallery that has our own art, but it's next to the shooting range. So the guy's actually shooting through the walls and he's destroying all of the art.
Yeah.
It was very, very fun to make. It's very, very micro detail oriented. No one will ever get close enough to see any of it. But the client really enjoyed it. And I think that even though people can't see all the details, you can sense that it's there. And they actually hand out little periscopes if you request, and you can sit at your table and you can look at the boat.
And one thing to note about this is, at first glance, yes, it's crazy, it's weird, but in simpler form, all it is cabinets hung on a wall on a French cleat. So that's how they were designed, to just hang, click, click. And we installed this whole piece in, I think, maybe 2 hours. We were just in and out of the space, done. Because that's what it was, simply. It was just cabinetry. But we looked at that, the client needs a solution for, bottle storage behind the bar. Well, that's cabinetry typically. Well, how do we make that crazy and weird? And this was our solution, kind of. And that speaks back to what we're talking about today, of that outside of the box thinking, and how do you approach things a different way, even though everybody else has done it that same way over and over. There's always a option B or C, maybe even D.
Right. And before we go any further, I just want a little disclaimer. I know everybody says, think outside the box. Don't be afraid to do this. Like, you're your own worst critic and your own worst enemy, and free your mind. But it's actually kind of true. It is easier said than done. We've gotten a lot of arguments in the studio about, that's not going to work, that's too crazy. Like, come back to reality. And to be honest, it's if you haven't done it, it's a really good exercise. If you are working, pitch your client something extremely ridiculous. You might be surprised. It's something that in the beginning we struggled with really, really heavily. You know, we were trying to figure out how can we be creative, how can we be artists, but also how can we be true to ourselves. And that was just going in and kind of telling them what we thought. And either they got it or they didn't get it, or they liked it and they wanted to work with us and collaborate, and maybe, you know, we massage it and it comes to something that's final. But it's it doesn't do anybody any good to kind of sequester anything inside the box. I mean, otherwise, how are we going to grow? So that being said, we'll continue on with telling you cliche things about being unique.
And here we go. This is a shipping container on the sidewalk, and it's for a construction site, something we see very regularly in Seattle since the whole city's under construction. And the client came to us, and they wanted a creative solution for this construction walkway that's not going to get tagged up. So, okay, it's going to be some sort of painted solution. So we kind of looked back into history and found a classic thing called dazzle camo. Amazing term, I love it. Kind of want it tattooed on my neck, but I probably won't do that. And so we took dazzle camo, which was something they did to naval ships around World War II, is it?
Yeah, like the 40s.
It was kind of to paint this weird perspective on a ship so enemies couldn't tell if it was coming or going.
Which we thought was perfect for the construction industry.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it there, but you don't know what they're doing. Are they going this way? Anyway. Yeah, so it's an amazing, you know, it's a bunch of patterns and geometrics, and it's all in black and white, and visually it's really interesting, and kind of the optic illusion that it gives when you look at it is just really unique because of the way it works. And so we thought putting that in a city would be really funny. So we pitched it to Sellen with them not really understanding the irony of the social commentary to it. And this is it. And then we painted the inside day glow yellow because we felt like if it's a dark gray day, you want to walk through a tunnel of sunshine. So as people are on their phones, hopefully they feel that sense of warmth briefly as they walk through the tunnel. And then we tagged the inside with our logo, but monochromatic. So
Subtle, very subtle
they didn't
logo
see it.
tag, yeah.
So what else is there to say about this one?
I don't know, I think that's the gist of that one,
All right,
really,
cool.
yeah.
Next. Oh, not next. Okay.
Yes.
So this is where we kind of really lost our minds. And our client, luckily, thankfully, went along for the ride.
Yeah. So it was the same client as Jewel. They were opening a new spot up on Capitol Hill. This space is called Trove, and they loved working with us on Jewel. So they came to us and they said, "Okay, we're giving you the keys. Design our space," which we were like, "Ooh, okay." And it's a really fun space. There's actually 4 concepts.
Yeah, there's 4.
4 concepts wrapped into this one space, which was another challenge to figure out how to create an experience for every person to walk through and, you know, have a great time and not have it be disjointed. But one of the first things they wanted an ice cream walk-up window. So we, you know, batted around ideas, this and that and this and that, and somehow circled to this solution of embedding an actual ice cream truck into the space, and that's your initial handshake as you walk into Trove.
Which I remember vividly was made as a joke at the dinner table, and then somebody wrote it down and took it seriously.
Yeah.
So here it is. But yeah, and this was, you know, the reason why I think that this project is so poignant in this topic is because this is an extremely weird space. Not so much in the way that we designed it, but kind of what they were trying to do, the way they approached it, their whole concept. It was just, it was different. You know, they were putting 4 unique restaurants, but all owned by this. It was like one restaurant, but it was 4 restaurants, and you could order from this spot to this spot between this hour and this and that. And it's very confusing. And our goal was to create a space that was interesting, and like Justin said, each space has its own identity, but there's a flow and they work together. So there was a definite design and engineering element that went into this, but then we had to kind of make it look cool. And so we came up with solutions that, you know, I mean, this one's a little crazy because we embedded a truck on the side of a building. It's actually not embedded. We sawed off half of it, hung it on a French cleat, and made a window, and then, oops, wrong way. This thing's confusing.
And then just
we
cut
the
a notch.
front and
Yeah.
put that in there. So it's really two pieces that surround a wall, so it's a little room. Looks like a truck, but it's pretty easy, kind of. Not really. But one of the details that I really like about this space that I think is poignant to this conversation is that we did that room in shingles because we wanted it to be the cedar box. It's the bar. So we wanted it to be wood clad, and then the inside is all black. So it's kind of like a barrel is the idea. But we were like, how can we do this a little bit different?
Yeah, and a little bit of my background, I was a carpenter for about 15 years, so I put up a lot of shingles in my day. And I was like, guys, I like shingles, but let's just turn them on their side. It's just a fun, twist to do it, because it doesn't matter with the water drainage on these because it's interior, so easy enough to do that. And we kind of understood what it was going to look like, but when we saw it in person, just that subtle move of turning something as traditional as a shingle on its side really creates an unexpected feeling to the whole space, and just ratchets it up to another level in just the whole experience side of things.
Yeah, so you can be weird on a spectrum. It can be subtle like shingles or an ice cream truck.
Yeah.
And then this was a painting that we did for the bar. This is one of the most challenging paintings we've ever done.
Yeah.
We didn't tell them what we were painting. We just said we're going to put a piece of art here. And then we didn't decide what we were going to paint while we started on the painting. This actually has 6 paintings on it. You'd never know. But we would paint it, and then someone would come paint something else, and then someone would come paint something else. And it was really a challenge to get this dialed. But we wanted to do something that we had never done before. People kind of knew us for some of the diorama stuff, but we wanted to kind of push it and make it a little bit different. So this painting has Mount Rainier exploding, but it's very colorful because we don't want you to think about the impending doom that would happen if Mount Rainier actually exploded.
Right, and it's a scientific dissection of it too, so that's,
And then
helps.
underneath is the underground world of all the creatures and people and cities that live underneath the volcano that you have no idea about, including the German adult Airstream, where you can buy adult goods,
Yep.
and the nude beach.
And the nude beach, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
If you look closely down at the bottom by the Airstream, there's actually a little kid running away with a bra in his hand, and there's a girl that's like, ah!
Yeah,
That's just goofy stuff.
so this one was kind of fun. But if you take the time to look at it, it gets pretty weird.
Yeah.
This is not weird. This is a very neutral space, but these are very important in the work that we do. As we've started to go into spaces, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but one of the things that really helps with being a little bit crazy or off the edge or this or that is balance. This is something that we're kind of learning as we move forward. You can't have 100% electric coffin because that would hurt your eyes and probably give you a headache.
Yes.
So what we're right now studying as a studio is how do we balance neutral with the crazy? How do we make our work more of an exclamation mark versus overtaking the space? And this was something that we did a lot of study in this space, and this was weird for us because we're like, floor it, make the tables pink, who cares? And you can't always do that. So I think that, again, as we're talking about thinking outside the box and coming up with interesting solutions, it's also really a balance too of understanding how's that going to work, how can you make this a reality? And I think that having a sense of balance can help you get away with a lot of really unconventional things. If there's something to kind of offset it, people don't get so distracted, or they don't get so offended, or they don't get so engrossed and being overwhelmed.
Yeah, and to speak on that, we do that a lot with our projects now, where we create this baseline sort of mentality to the space. And what we did for this space, as an example, we created a very basic color palette from a pulled out view. This space is white, black, and gray. If you look at it from kind of a...
And red.
And the red is on the ceiling, yes. But that was how we kind of delineated these spaces. So the front, where you saw the truck and that noodle bar, is all white. And that's sort of like your initial airy handshake as you get into it. And then the cedar box moment that he talked about, that is the bar, is all black. So that's, kind of centered by this white mass. And then the back where the whole barbecue section is, everything's neutral and gray there. So it's kind of blends it all together. But again, it's not so in your face that you realize you're walking through that sort of, baseline thought process, which allowed us to inject those crazy moments that he's talking about, but keeping it all kind of clean and concise at the same time.
All right, so we'll quit boring you about our process. So this is another wallpaper we did. Again, it's a very similar color palette to Jewel, the restaurant. It's bigger, it's crazier. It's Godzilla attacking the city of Seattle. He's actually snapping the Space Needle in half. But it's kind of hidden in this classic artichoke motif, this like damask motif. So from a long distance, you wouldn't really know, but if you get up close, you can see all the carnage. There's like chainsaws. The ice cream truck's in there. And then what we did to really tie this whole place together is if you look in the gas cap of the ice cream truck, we actually built a 3D diorama of this scene of Godzilla destroying Seattle. It's like perfect kid height, so it's not really meant for adults. If you want to see it, you got to earn it. You got to get down on your knee and like look in there. But we really wanted to bring it full circle, so front to back. And yeah, so that's Trove. As we've progressed, we've started to feel like we want to do bigger and better things. One of those things is movement. How do we integrate movement into our work? This was new for us. We definitely dove into something that we had no knowledge about.
And the client asked us too. It was great. Have you guys ever made anything with Move? And we're like, well, we've done videos before.
Yeah, and so there's some really interesting stories about this piece. I'll tell you two quick ones. The first one, we met with the client and they were like, this is kind of what we want. Like I saw the diorama, but there's like that 50s style window where like the skier comes down the hill, and we're like, oh yeah, cool. And then our other partner, Stefan, who's not here, who was like, I got an idea. And without asking any of us, he got up to the chalkboard and he drew this crazy sketch of this, which is a boat that moves. It rocks up and down. There's waves that go back and forth, and then there's a 20-foot canvas behind it that rotates at full rotation in 10 minutes. I don't know the RPM. Basically, every single thing on this thing moves, and we've never made anything that moves. We didn't talk about this previously, and he pitched it to the client, and the client said, yes. So he left, and then we sat down with Steph, and we said, all right, how are we going to do this? And we did our best to design it. Another fun story. This thing did not work the first 3 times. It took us a full year to get this to work.
Yeah.
Pretty much. It took us a full year.
Very intense. But, a little bit to our credit is they gave us no timeline on this. They came to us and they said, we need this in a month. So we cranked this piece out in a month. And
it took 11 months to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Works like a dream now.
Yeah,
though.
now it works great. But this was really rad because, Stefan went off the deep end and pitched this, and, we just kind of came together as a studio. We're like, all right, this is crazy, but we're going to try to do this. And it was a struggle. It was frustrating. It was completely different than anything we'd ever done. And we are now pitching a concept to a client that went from having 5 moving parts to 701 moving parts. So we're ramping it up.
Yeah.
But it was really, good for us to do something that was different and weird, and it helped us grow. And, aesthetically it looks kind of like our work, but the whole back end was a completely different process. And I think that that's really important, and that kind of put us in a new space mentally which is a scary space, but like we can do anything. So I think it's just really good for, whether your professional career or your personal growth or whatever, to just try things, because you'll never know. You might figure something out, or you might figure out that you can't figure it out, and that'll save you some hassle in the long run.
Yeah, that's a big process of our, just brainstorming for any project now is, okay, well, we did that on the last project. We can't do that again. We don't like to really repeat things, even though you can see a thematic quality to all of our work. We're always trying to push our own envelopes, not just, conceptual envelopes that are out in the world. We're always like, oh, no, we did that 3 times already. What's a different way to do it?
Welcome to Oasis.
Oasis,
This
yes.
is one of our favorite projects, one of our newer projects. This just opened up a couple months ago. This is completely different than anything we had ever done. This was, again, something that we pitched to a client, and then they left, and we're like, okay, how are we going to make this? And which is a kind of a theme.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
This was really weird. We have a rocket man taking flight, and the smoke's made from a bunch of different objects. And I think that, one of the things that is interesting for us as we're working through things is, we can see a narrative of. Yeah, that's him, actually. We put that sound effect in.
Yeah.
Yeah. What the hell was I saying?
That was good timing with the Rocket Man. Basically, this piece was a departure for us because, typically some of those other pieces you saw are very heavily modeled with your kind of more traditional train set looking stuff, which we were like, oh, we can't be known as the guys that model everything. Even though this is seriously model heavy, it's just a whole new kind of take on it. We literally went to the Goodwill bins and found a bulk of this stuff just in bucket loads. And
You want to talk about weird? Try spending $1,000 at the bins.
That's a lot of stuff.
We just rolled out of there with trunks and Macklemore's got nothing on us. We get a lot of weird looks when we're shopping because we did a project where when we did the boat, we had to buy a toy. We were looking for models, so we went to Toys R Us. 2 grown men in Toys R Us buying toys. It was.
Yeah, I was pushing him in the shopping cart, so that probably didn't help.
Yeah.
And he had just gleam in his eyes, and we were shoving stuff in there. It was great.
Well, when you're a child and you're going through the store and you're always like, oh, I want that, and then you're an adult and you're like, I can afford all this on someone else's budget. I'll take that, looking at that. So, anyway, I digress. So this, I can't think of another word besides weird. Abnormal? It's, traditionally it's weird. It's a weird thing. It's like it's a rocket ship, and then it's made of all this stuff. And, from a distance, it's one composition. You get up close, there's a ton of stuff hidden there. There's some inside jokes within us. There's some things that relate to the client. There's a bunch of random stuff. There's things that don't make any sense. And it just, I think for us, that's kind of how we are approaching our work, is we want it to be layered. We want there to be different levels. And part of that is really thinking about what can you put in those layers. And in order to keep pushing forward and progressing, we just kind of have to keep up that level of weirdness.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that that's really important for us. Maybe not to you guys. I don't know if you guys are graphic designers or UX designers, and I know that there's all kinds of rules in those industries. We're very fortunate we don't have to listen to any of those rules. But I think that, what we're doing in our weird little world, I think, is something that could be applied to all kinds of industries. I think that if
Definitely.
people just work within the lines, and how are you going to grow? And I'm not saying that we're always right and we always win. We have a ton of failures in our studio. We've had things fall off the wall. We've had all kinds of mishaps. But we tend to occasionally win with things like this, and it's from just kind of not willing to make something that's been made, or make something normal, or make something that people expect. And I think that that's kind of really the goal, or the main point of us being here, because other than that, I can't figure out why we're here.
Yeah, and thanks for having us.
Is that it?
I think so. You
There's
got
the
it?
Rocket Man.
Up close.
Yeah.
He's got a great look on his face.
Does he? There we go.
Uh,
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. So we've got about 10 minutes for any questions from the audience. I'll let you guys pick and choose. Sure. Yeah.
Dave.
So Rachel and Say, who own Jewel and Pro, how did they find you in the first place, and how did you credentialize yourself to win that work, considering you haven't done a restaurant before?
That
Great
kind
question.
of came through a relationship that I had established with them. So my artwork is displayed in Revel, and I hung it in there, so I, kind of got the initial handshake right there.
He'd hung a piece of art on the wall so they knew we could build stuff.
Yeah. Well, no, I was about to say, furthermore, the architect was Graham Baba at the time, and I established a relationship with him and then did a couple just solo projects in his spaces, and that kind of gave us a little bit of reputation, and then from that, they came to us with Jewel, and were like, hey, do you want to tackle this? So that's how that came together.
Did you talk to other people as well? Were you competing or?
Not to our knowledge.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there was any.
I think we just
Anybody
wowed
else?
him with that sign.
Yeah.
Game
And the
over.
misspelling.
Yeah. Yes.
What's your, like the creative process seems like super collaborative and you guys are open to letting other people just spray paint over things, but with the client and the agency, there's like a lot of different touch points with the client and requirements and kind of that blessing. Do you guys have that same process or what, are you sharing just sketches? It seems
Well,
like
as we've grown and done bigger projects for bigger clients, we do have to fit into that system a little bit. We've been very fortunate that as we go to meet with clients, we're pretty upfront with our process and how things happen and how they evolve. And generally, we've only had a few hiccups where people are like, whoa, this is way different. Generally, as long as we keep people informed and updated, they tend to go along with us. But that's been a struggle. I mean, we're doing some stuff for some pretty big clients currently, and they're much more stringent than we have, like review 1, review 2, and we're like, this is really weird.
Yeah.
But it's, as we're growing, we're just trying to adapt. I think it's really that balance of trying to be creative, but also being professional, which is kind of a no-brainer. But I think it's really just communication. We're just very open with them. This is how we work. This is the work that we've done. We're gonna do something interesting, and so if you're along for the ride, let's go.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I admire how much like trust it kind of demands on a client, hiring you guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Yeah. We're getting only in the front. Yeah.
Yeah.
How much
Oh.
did your fine art degree background like influence your process? Like compared to just, I mean, did you throw everything out? And 'cause it sounds like you have a different process than maybe evolved.
Right. The fine art process is a huge, huge thing that always comes up with us, and that sort of, critique mentality that you go through in art school of kind of always critically looking at the idea and the concept behind whatever you're trying to put out there. So it's a huge part of just the brainstorming, and then it's also a huge part of our actual physical process in every way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we strive to do with every project, whether it's apparent or not, is that everything is narrative driven. So for us, one of the first steps in our process is defining the narrative. Like, what is this project? What is the story they're trying to tell? What's the message we're conveying? And then from there, we can develop concept and start to think about creative approaches to tell that story versus just writing it on the wall, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
At what point in the process do you allow yourselves to mirror the architectural and Seattle building code and other space requirements in that? So for example, the ice cream truck, right? There probably were certain distance of entryway and all
Right.
that kind of stuff. And so
Yeah.
do you let that inform your process further?
So right out of the gate. Yeah, absolutely. Because, like I said, I do have construction background, so I understand building codes. So that's always like an initial thing in our concepting process. Like, oh, can't do that code. Oh, that sticks out too much for ADA, things like that. So we're always thinking of that first, because that's one of your initial boundaries you're going to run into in that sort of brainstorming process.
We've also learned the hard way, so we've learned some code along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're fortunate now. Most of the projects we're getting in rather early, so we have the opportunity to have the dialogue with the architects and the developers, so it makes it easier. Yes.
Do you think about how your audiences will interact with your work, which in today's day and age in restaurants and public spaces, is like taking pictures and sharing and Instagram and everything like that? Have you seen your work be shared a lot, and do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
It's definitely something that we consider, whether we like it or we don't like it. Many clients use the word Instagrammable. We want that moment. We want that like social currency. They're paying us to create this installation. So like, what's the ROI on that? And part of that is sharing through social media or documenting. And we've been fortunate that we can generally count on people wanting to stand in front of things or take photos, and so we've gotten pretty lucky. In
Yeah,
that
and
regard.
another thing we do with that is we kind of take an approach, a third-party approach. Like, okay, if we didn't make whatever this is and we came upon it, out in the public, how would we react to it? So we kind of take that critical eye, like, would I take the time to just get in there and check out the details? Like, is it going to be captivating? So that's a huge thing for us. We want to grab people's attention because it's a tough thing to do with how, inundated we all are with a vast amount of information on a daily basis.
Yeah. In the back.
Do you ever find yourself focusing too much on a small piece, and then how do you get out of that focus and kind of break it down and future stuff?
Yeah, constantly. There's 3 of us, so inevitably somebody will focus on some small detail and how are we going to do this? We need to figure this out right now. And then luckily there's 3 of us, so someone will go, yo, we got to figure out what color we're going to paint it. Don't worry about that nut. And
Yeah,
bolt."
or they'll just come by you and paint right over what you're focusing on. And you're like, yeah,
That
okay,
too.
we're good. I'll go over here then.
Yeah. Being that we're a group, there's checks and balances, and so we hopefully as we're working through the process, somebody at some point will be able to realize what we need to be focusing on versus what we might be focusing on. So, an eye calendar keeps us on schedule. Oh, who are we pointing to?
Long hair, pulled back, beard. Yep.
We'll get to you next.
A lot about sort of being weird and creative and break out on a large canvas where somebody comes to you and is like, hey, we have a project, blank canvas, just do something with it, make it cool. Can you maybe think of a time or speak to a time where you were forced to be much more weird and creative, but on a really small scale within tighter constraints? Because I think that's something a lot of creatives struggle with, where they don't have that massive canvas, and they
Right.
just have a very granular problem that they have to solve,
Right.
or a very granular piece to be creative with.
Yeah, definitely. And one example, oddly enough, is in the Gray magazine, which is out on the table there. It was a
That's
kit-
not small though.
Not small. In a sense, it's a small kitchen, but so it's let me make my point here. So my point is, it was a different format for us to work in. So traditionally we're doing restaurants and big public spaces, and we had a private client come to us and want to do their own personal space, which is a huge thing to take on, because interjecting like a crazy rocket man into somebody's everyday living space isn't the right choice, because it's going to be too much overstimulation. So we really tried to reduce down what we normally do to a space and make it very livable for someone on a daily basis. So that was, in a sense, it speaks to what you're talking about, trying to granulize and shrink that craziness and make it livable in small scale in a way.
It was more about nuances and subtlety, and that kitchen still has the same ridiculous themes and stuff we would put in our normal work. It was just, maybe we make it tonal, maybe we, put it underneath something so it's not the first thing you see. So in that regard, it was a challenge, and how do we have it be us, but also be, like you said, livable. We've done a few projects as well. Maybe this might fit your answer or your question a little bit more. As we've grown and done some things, people come to us now for all types of things, and one of that is visual identity. So even though our other partner has done graphic design for the last 12 years, and Justin studied graphic design at Cornish before they had computers.
Yeah.
None of us really have a formal graphic design degree, but what we've done is started to use our process and our approach to do branding, and it's a much smaller scale, and basically our thought process is kind of what we were saying earlier, we figure out the narrative, we figure out what are they trying to say, what are they trying to do, and I know that this is not new information, but so we figure out what the whole goal is, obviously, and then we just apply our thoughts and our concepts, but doing it on a smaller, single color 2D level. And I still think that you can approach things this way, and it's scalable, but sometimes we're lucky and it's the side of someone's building, and sometimes it's, the mark that goes on their packaging. So. All right, we'll get to Heather long hair.
What is your process between each other when you're struggling with an idea or someone has a great idea and you're stretching each other to think outside the box, but you're creative people and what this idea is not your idea? What's your process to stretch each other across the box?
Boxing gloves.
Boxing gloves, no.
Just kidding.
Well, to be completely candid, I am like the weirdo in the group. And
Weird.
I would say 90% of my ideas get shot down. 90%. That's a lot, but it doesn't affect me at all because sometimes when we're having those stalemates or we're struggling and being stagnant, I like to just throw out just bizarre crap. Like, oh, what about a 40-foot piñata? No takers? And they just shake their head and they look at me, and then I just kind of start free-forming weird crap out there. And it eventually jumpstarts one of us into a tangent that will lead us down that path to the solution. It's a tricky process of just kind of always, bringing a little jazz.
We've also worked together now for 6 years, not 5. And we've been fortunate that we've been able. There were some rough years in the beginning where we were all artists. We all had egos. We all thought we had the idea. We all thought we were the best painter. We all thought just listen to what I'm saying, it'll work. And we just had to beat those egos down and realize that we're a team. And so now we've worked into a situation where, like he's saying, he'll say weird things. Stefan will be looking at super designy things, and I'm looking at budgets, and then somehow in all of that, we'll figure out a solution that works. But it's just understanding each other's personalities and kind of figuring out how we can fit those pieces together. If you were to sit in on our brainstorming, it's kind of weird. And I don't mean to keep saying that, but it's an interesting process. We have our own language. I mean, I can say the thingamajig, and he will go get the tool that I'm talking about. So we just know each other very well at this point. So it's kind of bouncing things off of each other and being able to extract maybe what he's saying or Stefan's saying or I'm saying at more of its core.
Yeah, and it's a good thing because we're all on the same brainwave patterns in a sense, where you can kind of extract a thought from the other guy's head and really run with it, and then one guy, it's just like a jam band or some weird jazz being played where we're like, oh yeah, and then bam.
Does anybody else have a question?
Yeah.
Last question. All right.
You guys have talked about how you like to change it up on a project-to-project basis, and we've seen a lot of installation work that's really beautiful. Do you guys have can you share about any areas that you're interested in going towards, or if you would be moving more from static installations to maybe interactive pieces with all the moving parts?
That's a great question. Let us tell you our goals for the future. We're always trying to evolve. One of the things that we have our eye on right now, and being in this town, we're very fortunate because there's a lot of opportunity, which is how do we take our analog builds and make them digital? How can we incorporate interactive technology, screens, take it so we can push it through a different media. Last year, we were very fortunate. We got to shoot a movie with the Seahawks. It's called Seahawks vs. Monsters. Bailey was there. If you haven't seen it, it's the epitome of this conversation. It's 4 minutes of it's really fun. But that opened up a lot of doors for us. We were like, whoa, we don't have to paint a painting. We can do this digitally. So for us, it's digital. The other thing that we're trying to do more of is public temporary activations. So we've done a couple pieces this year. They were not in this presentation, but where we were doing installations out of used clothing. How do you rethink used clothing? We did one at Alki. We did one in Toronto. So that type of stuff is really interesting. How can we look at different medias, digital media, and then also break out of our studio? Mm-hmm. So is that it? All right. Thank you.